He's one of the great receivers in Chicago Bear history, but I don't know if that's saying a lot. It's not a. I don't even know if they have a top 10 great receivers of all time in Chicago Bear history. He's Tom Waddle, current host of Waddle and Sylvie on ESPN 1000. Of all the introductions you've had, where does that one rank, Tom?
That's the most honest and accurate, Dan. There's no doubt. Brandon Marshall once famously said Chicago's a place where receivers go to die.
Yeah. Well, given that scenario here with what you have on the roster, if Caleb Williams looks at the Bears right now, what would he want to go to the Bears given what they have? Yes?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, let's look at an improved offensive roster. DJ Moore is a true one in the league. He may not be a top 5 receiver, but he's a top 10 receiver in the league, in my opinion. You're getting more out of Cole Kmet than they've gotten in the past. They've got draft currency. They've got cap space. They've got a lot of ways to improve themselves inside that offensive huddle. The offensive line has improved. And outside of the actual, huddle, I think, Dan, if you research the history of the quarterback position here in Chicago, there have been some blips, some positive blips, but we've never had a 4,000-yard passer. We've never had a quarterback throw for 30 touchdowns in a season. If Caleb Williams or Drake May or Jaden Daniels or whoever that guy is comes to this town and becomes the first guy to do some of that and become a true legitimate franchise quarterback, that guy may be the second most popular sports figure in the history of this city behind MJ.
Yeah, but didn't I hear that 4 years ago with Justin Fields?
Yes, you did. And we're going to say it again until it actually becomes reality. We are going to speak it into reality, Dan.
You spoke to the Bears GM yesterday.
Yeah.
What is Ryan Poles saying or not saying?
I think the one thing, there are a lot of things I respect about Ryan. I think Ryan's done a really nice job in a short period of time improving this roster in a lot of ways. Has it been perfect? No. The Chase Claypool trade was something that didn't work out. There have been other small issues, but for the most part, I think Ryan's done a fantastic job. He's been very honest. I think he's been very professional. I think the things that I cling to from what he said yesterday, first and foremost, were that they're going to do right by Justin. And that tells me, Dan, I don't think you start talking about doing your quarterback right by handling the situation with being professional and being honest about it. I think that's the right way to do it. But you don't even, I don't believe, go down that avenue if you're going to go forward with him. So I think it was kind of a telling conversation.
Yeah, but if you want to do right by Justin Fields, you keep him and you pay him. They're not going to do right by Justin Fields.
Well, Dan, I think doing right by Justin is if you've made the decision, and he talked about, Ryan also talked about a lot of, no one wants to live in the gray. No one wants to live in between. I think there's more gray with regard to where they could trade Justin and teams that would be willing to dance with them versus where Ryan Poles is with regard to his decision with the number 1 overall selection. So with that, if they've made that determination, then doing Justin right means making a deal sooner rather than later. It works for everyone. It's better for the Bears. It's better for the team that would dance with you. And it's better for Justin to make that deal sooner rather than later. And I think when he references doing right by Justin, he's talking about handling this with a professional approach and keeping him in the loop at all times. I don't think, the only thing I would push back on, being professional doesn't necessarily mean that you cave to making him your guy going forward and paying him. I would say be honest with him and keep him in the loop.
Yeah, Ryan Poles has to do what's best for the Bears, not what's best for Justin Fields. This isn't a situation where Bill Belichick hand-delivered Jimmy G to the Niners because he didn't want Jimmy G to go to Cleveland.
Right.
It's rare when a coach or GM or owner does something like that. But if you're Ryan Poles, you didn't draft this guy. Your job is attached to the next decision you make.
Yes.
I'll do right by Justin, but I'm doing right by the Chicago Bears.
And Dan, I think in a lot of ways, this is a unique situation. How many times does the team with the number 1 overall selection have a 7-win season the year before? Like usually that guy's going to a team that's had 2 or 3 wins.
Sure.
So I mean, if if the Bears had the 10th overall selection, our conversation isn't about where we're trading Justin Fields. Our conversation's about whether or not they're picking the fifth-year option up and how are you going to improve around him. I think Justin is unfortunately a victim of circumstance right now. I think Justin's a good quarterback. I don't think he's an upper echelon quarterback, and he's got room to grow. But this, to me, is a conversation because of the luxury the Bears have with the first overall selection. And if that's Caleb Williams or whoever it is, that guy is coming into a situation where there is some infrastructure, there is some foundation that is being built, and there are other assets that can be deployed to make that guy's transition from college to the NFL a lot smoother than a lot of other ones.
Talking to Tom Waddle, former Bear wide receiver, current host of Waddle and Sylvie on ESPN.
Mediocre Bears receiver.
Mm-hmm. Well, you played.
Well, that's true.
You played. Fan favorite.
Well, that's because most of them were faster than me, bigger than me, and stronger than me, and they saw themselves in me.
Let's say there wasn't Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels in this draft. What do the Bears do?
That's a great question. I don't know how they would feel about maybe J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix or Michael Penix. I don't believe they'd be willing to use the first overall selection. They would move. I think they would move out of this pick. I think this is unique because they have that first overall selection. By the way, for the second consecutive year.
Yeah.
And many have, looked back at what transpired last year and said, wow, did Ryan make a mistake there by not using the first overall selection, not on Bryce Young, but on C.J. Stroud with the way he played? I'm not in that camp. I think he made the right decision. They were still evaluating Justin, and he needed to rebuild the roster with all of the picks he got in return. But if there wasn't a quarterback that this staff believed was, I won't use the term generational, but a guy that can get you further along than where the current guy can get you, I think they definitely move out of the pick and they try to bolster the roster around the QB.
All right, I'll leave you with this. What should happen? What will happen?
I think what should happen and what will happen will coincide. I think they should. I have a lot of respect for Justin. He's a good young kid. He's a hard worker. He's a good athlete. He's a good teammate. He's been dealt a bad hand. As I said, I think he's a victim of circumstance, but I don't think he's been good enough consistently enough to move forward with him. So I think they will trade him. And I do believe that they will use the first overall selection on Caleb Williams. I think at this point, my guess is that they're very comfortable with who he is as a QB on the field. They've just got to make sure that they're comfortable with who he is off the field. And I think that process is ongoing.
He's one of the best white wide receivers out of Boston College to play for the Bears.
Whoa, timeout. Brian Brennan was a much better wide receiver than I was, who also fits that narrative.
Okay, all right. The second best white wide receiver to play for the Bears out of Boston College.
Well, that's maybe that played for the Bears, yes, because Brian played for Cleveland and Cincinnati. So maybe I jumped the gun there.
Okay.
But yeah, I think your criteria works.
Right, keep your head up.
Thanks.
Most people, when they do a Zoom call, they have all kinds of awards in the background and trophies in the background.
I don't have any awards or trophies.
You don't have any.
This is not a flex, Dan. What am I going to flex? I wore my Bears alumni pullover is what I did for you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Great to talk to you, buddy. Tell Sylvie we said hello.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
That's Tom Waddle, former Bear and current host of Waddle and Sylvie on ESPN 1000. Very popular there.